Spyro 1.
I did it.
Spyro 2.
I did it.
Spyro 3.
I did it.
All 3 save files have reignited.
I did it.
Hello everybody, welcome back to 2DS Studios. I'm 2DS, and as you can tell from the intro, I just beat the entire Spyro Reignited Trilogy. And all this exposure to Spyro made me turn into him. Yeah, I guess it's like the old saying, you are what you eat. And with that, I got the idea to make a top 15 talking about the hardest and worst challenges in the entire trilogy. This won't be quite like an average top 15 where I just go over all 15 in one list. What I'm gonna do is that I'll be doing 3 top 5s for each game. The rule is that if 2 or more missions are in the same level, that will count as just one level. This is mainly for Spyro 2 and 3 because Spyro 1 has a different structure compared to the sequels. Spyro 2 and 3 are very mission focused, meanwhile Spyro 1 is more just about getting to the end of the level. And I will also be counting the flight/speedway levels too, and bosses. And with that, let's go over the top 15 worst Spyro Reignited Trilogy missions. No better place to start with than with Spyro 1. Now, completing Spyro 1 was interesting for me because it's the shortest game for me to complete, mainly because of how simple the first game is. On one hand, I really like the first game because of the simplicity, but compared to the sequels, it can also just feel a little bare bones and basic. But that's kind of to be expected when it comes to a first game in the series. And for a first game, Spyro 1 is still pretty solid. But despite it being the easiest one for me to complete, it is still hard in some cases. Hence why we're talking about him in this top 5. Starting with... First up on the list is Treetops, and anyone who's played Spyro 1 definitely knows why this is on the list. At first, you start off the level fighting some monkeys, and you think, oh okay, this isn't too hard, right? But then you get to the reason why it's so difficult. The ramps. The whole thing with Treetops is that it's all built on a bunch of ramps on these trees they have to supercharge on to get to the other trees. And it's a fine mechanic, but it can get really annoying with 2 jumps in particular. One is the final dragon Jed, and the second is the final bit of treasure and a thief at the very end of the level. I do really like this level because of how well thought out the supercharge mechanic is, but it's on this list for a reason. The hard part of doing this is, 1, figuring out which ramps to take, or else you end up running around all over the place getting lost because you're just basically supercharging in circles around the whole level. And 2 is actually making the jumps. The big thing for me when it comes to this level is that all the supercharging kind of messes with my head because then I end up going on the wrong ramps and taking the wrong path, and then I eventually just straight up forget what I was even doing and which ramp I was even trying to take, and so I'm just left confused in my thoughts looking like this.
How'd you get over there?
Over where?
There.
Where?
There. How'd you get over there?
Who are we talking about?
When you do finally manage to hit those supercharges just right and in gliding, it feels very good. It feels so satisfying to finally get it right, but the road to getting there costs me many deaths. And I think what Spyro says to Jed perfectly summarizes how I feel about this level.
Yeah, well, you could have found an easier spot to get stuck.
Misty Bog is an interesting level to me because it has a lot of stuff that I both really love and really hate. It looks great when it comes to visuals, and compared to the other swamp levels taking place at night, the daytime touch really makes it stand out. It's a really fun level to explore. The music is the best thing to come out of a swamp since Shrek. And it has 2 of my favorite dragon interactions in the game.
I'll tell you what to do with those creatures. Smash them, Spyro! Stamp them out and squish them and squash them!
How about charge them and flame them? We are dragons after all.
Well, gee, Damari, you seem to like this level a lot. Why would you put it in the top 5 worst list? The frogs.
Be on the lookout for attack frogs. They are cold-blooded killers.
Attack frogs?
And this used to be such a nice swamp.
And boy was he not kidding, because those frogs can be some of the most annoying enemies to deal with in this game. The moment you see one of those frogs, you better be on your guard, because if you hit the timing of the attack button incorrectly, they're just gonna hit you straight in the face. And those aren't the only enemies you have to worry about either. You got Norks with knives ready to stab you like a Scream movie, and then you got these trees where they're shaking at first, but then you take one step too close and they just jump right at you. FNAF would be way scarier if that was the jump scare animation. And another thing about the Misty Bog enemies is that they all like to be in groups of 3 or more. For example, you glide over to this little hut and you see 3 frogs guarding the entrance. You take them out and then—
Oh my goodness!
It is almost impossible for me to get through this without getting hit, except for this one time where I actually did manage to do it, but I didn't get it on video because trying to record with the Nintendo Switch recording button just sucks. Like, I don't understand how recording on Switch works like that, because the way you have to hold the button and it's like the clips are only a certain length, I mean, it's so stupid. But like I said before, I still like both Treetops and Misty Bog because I really enjoy the level design. It's just that the enemies can be really cheap and some of the gimmicks can be a little annoying at times. Also, charging into these Norks is super satisfying. Remember that I actually like these two because it only gets worse from here. God damn, why are the Beastmakers all catching us straight? This is the 3rd one. The Speedway levels are fun little breaks between the platforming, and it feels good to be able to fly around in this game every now and then. I mean, I can't imagine having a game where you play as a dragon and not being able to fly. And I enjoy doing the Speedways, and they can offer a really fun challenge, except for Wild Flight. The thing about Wild Flight is that a lot of the challenge feels very cheap and poorly designed in comparison to the other speedways. All the speedways in Spyro 1 are in wide open spaces, but this one, everything feels all clustered and compact. All the collectibles are in like small little rooms and hallways, and it gets very annoying trying to squeeze through. The hallways are so thin that it's very easy to bump into stuff. Plus, all the things you have to collect in this level are really close to the water, which if you fall in, you will immediately fail and have to restart the level all over again. And with this one, it's very annoying because it feels like the water just sucks you in like a vacuum cleaner. And unlike the other speedways, this one doesn't even look nice. It just looks like they grabbed a bunch of random assets like trees and crystals and factory stuff and just threw it in. Like, it feels like there's no real theme in this one. And this speedway is just flat out redundant, not only with all the restarts, but if I wanted to rage at hallway levels, I'd play Crash Bandicoot. Spyro 1 definitely is not the best of the trilogy, and one big reason why that is because of the bosses. All the bosses in this game are basically trash. There are more levels than there are bosses. The base level attached to the boss is fine, but the boss itself is so weak. Like, these bosses are so ridiculously easy that the enemies in the boss level are harder than the boss itself. With all the bosses in Spyro 1 being on the same level of patheticness, I decided to just lump them all together and discuss why I think they all suck. Which boss has the hardest enemy? Those annoying dogs in Toasty's boss are the only enemies in the entire game that required 2 hits to kill instead of 1. Dr. Shemp has a ridiculously large plus he has a bootleg Crash Bandicoot mask on his stick. Also, if you hop on this ledge, you can watch the enemies fall to their death. Blowhard is a flying beard with arms. I'm sorry, what? Jacques looks like a bootleg version of the mask. Metalhead is the only one that comes across as somewhat decently designed. We have to charge at the poles, but he goes down 2 hits, so the fight's over really fast. Also, the monkeys are super annoying in this level. Doesn't help that they were in treetops. And Nasty Nork is absolutely pathetic, with it just being another thief chase. They have to chase 2 keys, then chase Nasty Nork, and he goes down 2 hits.
That was easy.
Twilight Harbor, the last level before the final boss. And this one is on here for one reason and one reason only. The Nork Commandos and their stupid Splatoon guns. You have big enemies with super big machine guns, and then you also have smaller ones with smaller miniguns. They're both very annoying, but I think the smaller ones are even worse. You see, the big ones are on a very specific pattern where they just shoot from side to side and then take a break. So it's very easy to figure out how to hit them. But the small ones are the annoying ones because they will just aim in whatever direction you're going to, which makes their bullets very hard to dodge and leads to me losing sparks all the time. It's like, and the worst part is at the very end of the level where they're all like in groups, just like Misty Bog. don't you just love it when you're at the very end of the level, then you get shot by one of the stupid Norks, and then you fall into the water, and because you can't swim like the other games, you end up drowning or trying to get yourself back onto the platform just to get shot again and then dying. It's... Now to move on to Spyro 2 by introducing you to the greatest piece of video game music ever created. Take it away, Jack.
1, 2, 3.
Spyro 2 is my personal favorite of the trilogy for balancing new elements with old. It added some new elements to spice up the gameplay, but it still stuck true to the core platforming that made Spyro good. And despite all the improvements that it did make, it did have a few problems with it too. One is that the backtracking can get a little annoying sometimes when you don't have certain abilities. And two is that damn bear. But I'll save my hate for him in another video. I'll get my revenge on that bear soon enough. Spyro 2 is infamous for some really annoying missions when it comes to the original trilogy, but what do I think of the hardest ones?
Now you listen to me! I have been through ice.
Okay.
I have been through the ocean.
Right.
I have spent 2 hours in a maze with snail elephants looking for a pencil.
What?
Okay, this mission is a real doozy, and when I played this game for the first time, I was like, wait, what am I supposed to do with this egg? As anyone else would be. So here's what you have to do in order to get this orb from the professor. You have to take this egg up to a nest, and then a bird will fly up to the nest and then drop a seed. Then you have to take this seed into a planter, then the plant grows and throws up a rubber duck. Then you have to take this rubber duck into this pond with a family of ducks that feels really depressed for some reason. And then, once you drop the duck there, the duck's gonna give you a radish. And then you have to take this radish into a cauldron that's in a cave for some reason. And then, when you put the radish in the cauldron, a coin falls out the cauldron, then you have to take that into the well, and then you'll finally get the pencil for the professor. Everybody got that? Good. As fun as Zephyr is to play through, it does have its downsides. The enemies can be really annoying, and it's also home to this mission. So, Little Bo Peep has lost her Calyx, and now it's up to you to find them all over the level. And if you don't know what a Calyx is, it's this thing. There's 7 of them, and you have to get them back into Little Bo Peep's pen. It doesn't sound too hard, all you gotta do is charge or flame them to get them back into the pen, move them around. But the problem comes with these 4 in particular. You have these 2 that you need to super flame out of this cave and into the pen area. Because the super flame is way stronger than your normal flame, the Calyx will shoot up into the air like a rocket. But you have to make sure you're aiming very carefully or else they're gonna fly up and then back into the bottom. The Calyx physics are really weird. Especially when you finally get them out of this area, just for one to start floating in the air and the other to sink into the ground. And then there's 2 more they have to get across this gap. The Calyx really like to land on like the edge of the gap to where you think they would fall, but just because of collision or other programming stuff, they are just barely on the land, and you have to give them just a little extra push, but make sure they don't bounce off the wall, and then you have to do it all over again. Anytime I try to like charge or flame them across the gap, they end up bouncing off the wall, like just barely making it. I personally don't know which one of these 2 is more annoying, but tell me which one you think are more annoying in the comments below. And I won't read them. Robotica Farms can be a pretty fun level, but god, can this also be so annoying. The attack pattern on these wasps is such a pain to figure out, and I almost always get hit by them at least once or twice. And don't even get me started on this singular windmill that always messes up my jump because of the seesaw thing. Seriously, the timing on this part alone is such a pain. But the real pain in the butt has to come from the supercharge mission. With this supercharge, you are forced to get all of these pumpkins around the supercharge track. And if you remember what I said about treetops, you'll know that yes, I do like the supercharge, but it can be very annoying sometimes, especially when it comes to tight turns. The turns on this track make it very easy for you to either completely fall off the track or to crash into a wall and lose the charge. Plus, it's also a pain in the butt trying to make sure you remember how to get there without bumping into anything and losing the charge, because you're going so fast that you might forget where everything is. But as annoying as this supercharge can be, there is definitely worse things than Spyro 2. I'm gonna take a quick break to be a little bit positive before I talk about this next bit. Spyro 2 is a massive improvement when it comes to boss battles in that the boss battles actually fight you instead of running away. Crush is a very strong boss, not only as a first boss, but also in comparison to the bosses in Spyro 1. And Ripto is an absolute banger, easily one of my favorite final bosses in any platformer. But in between two great final bosses comes the pain in the ass known as Gulp. Now, don't get me wrong, I do appreciate the bosses actually being somewhat difficult in Spyro 2 compared to Spyro 1, but Gulp takes it way too far. His laser attack is practically impossible to dodge half the time. I don't know what it is, but the laser accuracy is ridiculous. Like, it doesn't matter which way I go, I will always get hit by at least one of them. It's so annoying. And the amount of restarts that I've had to do on this boss, it's ridiculous. The amount of times where I am so close to beating him just to get killed on his very last 1 or 2 hit points is absolutely maddening. The key to beating him is using items around the battlefield to hit him, but there's one problem. He can also hit you with them. And if you do hit him, any other weapons, you have to be really quick to get them, or else they will get destroyed after Gulp jumps, because he's a big bag. And unlike the other two bosses, he can heal himself. If you get hit multiple times, a chicken will drop down so you can collect it as fodder for Sparks so he can get his health back. But the problem is that Gulp has access to them too, yet Ripto and Crush don't. Seriously, why did they make Gulp so ridiculously hard when even the final boss of the game isn't as hard as this? Look, I'll say it again, I don't have a problem with a boss being challenging necessarily, but when it's too challenging to the point where the final boss is easier, I think you might have a problem with the boss's difficulty. And there's a skill point for beating Gulp without getting hit once, and yeah, if it weren't for the Super Flame for 100%ing the game, yeah, I would rather jump into lava than try to do that. But even that sounds better than number 1. Fracture Hills. Fracture Hills is easily the most annoying level in Spyro 2, and it is a contender for one of the most annoying levels in the entire trilogy. At the start of the level, you have to free the satyrs from their stone prisons, kind of like Spyro 1. And it's over pretty fast. You do that, then you, finish the end of the level if you're not going for completion. But it doesn't end there. Now we have to talk about the orbs. First, you have to do a supercharge and a loop in order to freeze this fawn from a cottage. Needless to say, it is a supercharge. Everything I've said about the previous supercharge areas that I've mentioned applies to this one. Going super fast, tight jumps, tricky turns, and is very easy to mess up by making the smallest mistake. But let me tell you, this orb is a piece of cake compared to the next two. You go down to this area and you see Hunter, but he's caught between a rock and a hard place. And he says that, oh, an alchemist poured a potion on his feet that would give him magic shoes or something. So now he's stuck there and can't move. So you go on to the other shack and you see the alchemist right there. Allow me to welcome you to one of the most infamous, one of the worst Spyro missions of all time. Full stop. The Alchemist. This mission is infamous for being one of the worst things to endure in any video game ever. But why is that? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because it's an escort mission.
Look, a red flag!
For this lovely escort mission, what you have to do is guide the alchemist to Hunter, but you also have to charge into these enemies called Earthshapers so they don't hurt the professor and leave you having to start the mission all over again. These Earthshapers are the worst enemy in the entire game. I hate them with all of my being. It would be one thing if charging them killed them, but it doesn't because they're really big enemies. All it does is pushes them back a little bit and stuns them. And it's very common for you to get hit by them while they're doing their wind-up animation and you charge into them. And because they're so big, they can't be killed unless you push them into the lava, which takes forever because of how big it is. Back to the alchemist. He goes around this very specific route that is way too complicated for no reason, where he actively puts himself in danger of getting hit by the alchemist like an absolute moron, and he'll loop around to the same alchemist that you just hit, and you have just barely enough time to interrupt the attack. See, this wouldn't be a problem if it weren't for the fact that Hunter is literally just a left turn away from where the alchemist is.
This had one job. One!
And playing this for the first time, having to memorize the pattern of which way the alchemist goes is so annoying because of the constant restarts, and every time those stupid earth shapers hit you, they always do this super cocky gloating animation like, oh yeah, I did that. Acting like you just want to touch down at the Super Bowl. But hey, you finally made it to Hunter after all that, and you can talk to him because he has a new mission for you. Except there's one problem. You need the head bash in order to access it. But here's the kicker. If you leave this level afterwards, since you don't have the head bash, you unlock it in the third world. So once you unlock the head bash in the third world, you come back to finish Hunter's mission, but there's the problem with Spyro 2. Every time you leave a world and come back to it later on, everything resets. You still have the orbs, but in some cases you still have to like replay certain missions all over again. And you know what that means? It means even if you did the alchemist mission already, you have to do it one more time. So after going through that bullcrap, you finally get to do the mission with Hunter where you finally get to help him kill the other Earth Shapers. But just before you actually start the mission, he gives you a brief tutorial on how to use the head bash again. But like, wait a minute, Hunter. So you knew that I had the ability to head bash and you knew how I could do it, yet you didn't just teach me here instead of forcing me to pay that stupid bear to learn it? Some friend you are. And now to finish the series with Spyro 3. Spyro 3, pretty solid game and a good ending to the trilogy. But is it the best game in the series? I'd argue it's my least favorite in the entire trilogy. On one hand, I do like the variety and different characters that you can play as in this game, but on the other hand, it feels like it's like a little too much variety. Spyro 2 was able to balance it out pretty well, but Spyro 3 feels a little more unfocused. Like all the worst vehicles, and it really tears it down, which sucks because Spyro 3 is a really good game. I loved my time playing with it. But man, these missions made me question going for 100%. Spyro 3 easily has the worst speedway levels in the entire trilogy, and the worst one out of all of them is the very first one you start with, Mushroom Speedway. The normal speedway challenge is fine, all you have to do is get the targets in a short time period like the previous games, but they made one small change that is just so confusing to me. In the past games, if you finished all the tasks, you would get a time reduction, but in Spyro 3 you don't have that anymore. It's not a really bad change, but it's also really stupid to me because it's like, what is the point? I just think it's really stupid that they got rid of it because one, not only does that better your score, but it also makes collecting things in these levels feel more satisfying. Two, each speedway has a section where you have to play as Hunter to get another egg. Spyro 2 also had this, but you still played as Spyro during those segments where Hunter was just helping you out with the mission. But in Spyro 3, you play as Hunter and he's in a different vehicle in each one of them. And having to play as Hunter just kinda sucks in most of them. And it just makes me ask, what was the point of this when we could just fly as Spyro? Almost every Hunter challenge is based off flying, so you might as well just have us play Spyro instead of introducing new gameplay styles for no reason. For the Hunter mission in Mushroom Speedway, you have to shoot down these alien saucers in your own flying airship, but Hunter's airship is so big that half the time you can't even see the projectiles that the sheep are shooting you with. So half the time you get hit by something you could barely see or react to, which is very annoying. But Spyro 3 doesn't only ruin old elements, it creates new elements. limits that suck, because now the speedways have races. All of them they all suffer from the same problems, but the worst of it has to come with this very first race. You're racing these butterflies across the track, and you have to go through speed boosts to boost yourself up if you want to win. And you have to get first place in order to win the egg. But here's the thing, if you miss one boost, you might as well restart. You have to hit every single boost on every single lap. You have to be 100% perfect. And it doesn't matter, sometimes even if you do that, you'll still have to restart because, whoops, you're too slow! Even though you're doing exactly what the game wants you to. It's almost pure luck. Don't even get me started how slippery the boost is. How the f do you slip mid-air? The big reason why this race is worse than the other ones is because the other races you have power-ups to help you, which makes them a little bit easier. But not this one, and to think this is only number 5. She sells seashells by the shore. She sells seashells by the— damn it! God, I hate that tongue twister. But not as much as I hate Bluto. Bluto is a mini-boss that you fight on a speedboat with a machine gun on it, and you have to ride around the arena getting ammo before he does, or he'll shoot you. This boss is only on here for one reason. The boat controls are absolute ass. Really slippery and weird to control, and the camera angle makes it very confusing with like the way you have to move the analog stick to move. I swear, the camera really messes with your head with this one. The best strategy I have is just circle around all the boxes as you can, but when you miss one, have to turn around, that's where the awkward controls come in. But once you get like a bunch of missiles, just spam the attack button and you'll win pretty fast. But that doesn't make it any better. The controls still suck. Out of all the new characters that Spyro 3 introduces, Bentley is easily the worst of them all. He runs slow, he can't jump high, but this Yeti's one hell of a guy. I know some of you diehard Spyro fans are probably thinking that I'm going to be talking about the boxing section, and to that I say you are 100% wrong! The boxing mission is super easy. All you have to do is button mash and you win. If you lose to this, you're probably the same guy that loses to Glass Joe. But the whack-a-mole mission is anything but easy. This wizard guy needs to perform a magic show, but oh no, all these moles keep popping out, so you gotta whack them with your club. All the moles are super tiny, so it can be a little hard to track them down, especially because of the overhead camera angle kind of hiding things from you. But there's also 2 catches. One is that you're on a very strict time limit, and 2 is that other wizards will pop out too, so you have to make sure you don't hit them, and it's very easy to hit them on accident because of the overhead camera and because of them running around the same way the moles do. And even when you're so close to finally getting them all, you run out of time and you have to restart all over again. That's what I hate most about this stupid mission, is that you either mess up because of the freaking wizards getting in your way, a time limit that goes faster than a blink, or you hit the wizards on accident because you can't see anything because of the stupid camera. I hate these wizards getting in my way during the mission, but on the bright side, I get to beat them on purpose when I finish it.
Ow! I went boom again. I went boom again. I went boom again. I went boom again.
Hey, buckaroonies! Remember the bullshit alchemist mission from Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage where you have to do an escort mission that's super easy to mess up because of the NPC going on a stupid roundabout path instead of taking the obviously simple path and saving us all the time and headache, but instead of willingly running into obstacles creating the worst mission in the entire game?
Yes.
Cause I got news for you!
We're doing a sequel.
Oh, here we go again.
Man, why you gotta do this to Sheila? With Escort Mission 2, Electric Boogaloo, you have to guide these fireflies to the end of the path so they can blow up the cages to free the eggs. I don't know how the eggs are able to survive explosions, but whatever, I guess. But much like the alchemist, this one also has a catch. Because you have to stomp on mushrooms to clear the path for the fireflies, or else they'll walk straight into it and go boom. The mushrooms are very tall, so you have to double jump to reach them. But the problem with this is also because of the controls. If you hit jump the second after you hit the ground, you will do like a super big bounce and just catapult all the way up to space. The problem is that half the time you use the super jump on accident because you don't pay attention to how you do the jump, which means you'll skyrocket into the air and can't stomp down fast enough to stop the firefly from hitting the mushroom. And again, you have to memorize which path they'll go on and which mushrooms they're gonna run into. Plus there's mushrooms that they will willingly loop around towards, so you have to be careful of those too. And the worst part is that half the mushrooms here are just tricks to mess with your mind, gaslighting you into thinking, oh, which one is he gonna pick? So you're basically forced to retry it multiple times if you hit the wrong mushroom, because the game gaslights you. But hey, we finally made it to the end. It's finally over. Never have to do this ever again.
One egg gauge remains. Will you now help my brother to freeze the last egg?
No, I always saw myself blowing up on YouTube, but not like this. One thing I forgot to mention about the Alchemist mission is that you can skip it when you go into Fracture Hills for the first time, so you only have to worry about doing it once as opposed to doing it, realizing you don't have to head bash, and then doing it again once you revisit it. But this? Not only are you repeating the same mission from the previous game that's infamous for how annoying it is, specifically because you have to repeat it due to the game resetting. But in Spyro 2, you can still just choose to ignore it the first time, so you don't have to worry about that problem. But to then not only redo the same mission again, but make it so that the repetition is mandatory, you are actively doubling down on one of the worst aspects of the previous game. It's one thing to carry the same flaw as a predecessor, but to actively make that flaw even worse, why would you do that?
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
You know, the Firefly mission was so close to making it to #1. Not only did it take the worst mission of Spyro 2, but it actively made it worse on so many levels by completely messing up the controls and outright gaslighting you into making mistakes.
Damari, aren't you being a little dramatic to say that a video game about a purple dragon with scales is gaslighting you because you have a skill issue?
I've struggled with them for 6 years now, but now it ends. Finishing this with the worst mission of all, the fire dragons from Fireworks Factory. Much like the last mission, this revolves having to deal with 2 nuisances in order to get the egg. You have to use your Super Flight and Super Flame combo power-up in order to defeat the 2 fire dragons, but these dragons fire back. It would be fine if you just had to fight one of them, but there's 2 of them, and you fight them at the same time. Meaning while you're trying to aim at one, both of them can fire at you. And the worst part about their fireball attacks is that they can often hit you when you're not looking because of the camera being locked when you're flying. And again, because you're probably focused on hitting one target, the other one will sneak up and hit you. That's why you also can't fly directly in front of them or else they'll hit you with a fireball. And the worst part about this is that they have 2 tunnels where they can hide away. You have to spam the fire button non-stop to make sure that they don't regain their health. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, kinda like Gulp and Spyro 2, they can regain their health if you don't attack them for long enough, dragging this fight out a million times longer than it really should. Crazy how this optional mini-boss is harder than all of the actual boss fights in Spyro 2 and 3. And Spyro 1, but those barely count as boss fights. And another thing about when the fire dragons hit you, it is very hard to dodge them because flying around this arena is so awkward because it's so small, it makes you feel claustrophobic. And the flying controls, where they're perfectly fine, do not work well when it comes to really small spaces. Plus, having to spam the face button to shoot the fireballs sucks. Like, after a while, I had to switch to using the triggers because my thumb was legit hurting. Yes, this part is so bad that I was literally being caused physical pain. And the worst part is that when they are very low on health, they'll hide in the tunnels for what feels like an eternity to regain health. And because they get smaller and smaller with every bit of damage they deal, it becomes way more difficult to try to find them in the arena. I keep saying, oh, and the worst part, but let's be real. The entire fight is the worst part. Everything is the worst part. This is the worst thing in any of these games. I know that at the start when I was talking about Spyro 3, I sounded a little bit harsh when I said it's the worst one in the trilogy, but stuff like this is the reason why I think that. They introduced so many different playstyles, and they all just start clashing with one another. Where not all of the alternate playstyles are bad, far from it. I would love to see these come back in a future Spyro game, if we even get one, but you need to flesh them out so they actually feel finished and not undercooked like half the playstyles in this one. And nowhere is that more noticeable than with this top 5. Spyro 1 was very simple and bare bones, but it was the first game. Spyro 2 is a great sequel that further evolves the first game while adding new elements that still balances out what made Spyro work. Spyro 3 is my least favorite because not only does it introduce multiple new things where it feels like it's focusing more on quantity rather than quality, but it ruins some of the old stuff from the first 2 games that was perfectly fine. I have been struggling with this fight for literal years, ever since I had first gotten this game when I was like 12. And only now, in the year of our Lord 2024, have I been able to defeat it. So many times throughout the years, I would try going for completion, but once I reached this part, I would give up because it was just too hard for me. And after 6 years of being tormented by these dragons, I've officially 100%ed the Spyro Reignited Trilogy. I finally did it. Was it worth it? Yes! 100%ing these games is 100% worth it, thanks to the extra bonus levels. In each game, you unlock a secret world where you get to free fly, collect a bunch of gems, beat a bunch of thieves. In Spyro 1, you unlock Nasty's loot, which is where all Nasty's treasure is hidden. Since you beat him up and he wasn't really much of a fight, you get to steal all his stuff! Yay, robbery! Also, the original name for this world was Nasty's Booty.
I've been a nasty, no nasty.
Spyro 2, you get to take a nice relaxing vacation at Dragon Shores, filled with amusement park rides, a ton of love, and you get to dunk baddies with a ball. Kinda weird that all the Norks here are friendly, yet they were just trying to kill us in the first game, but whatever. And in Spyro 3's case, you get to fight the secret boss, which is... it's actually incredibly easy and anticlimactic. But the secret ending is really cute. Spyro 3's completion reward, it is easily the greatest reward out of the entire trilogy. You get tons and tons of gems, get to beat the final boss, get a secret ending that's amazing. It really is Nasty's loot on steroids. And despite how annoying the third game can be when it comes to different playstyles, it is definitely worth it, and it's able to save the game from being a complete slog for completion. See, I do like Spyro 3, it is a good game, it just gets a little bit annoying, kinda like Crash Bandicoot games. But they could never make me hate you, Crash.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
And of course, after that long, painful journey of finishing all of the games 100%, you know what that means. Gonna do it all over again.
Uh-oh. Here we go again!
That's it for this video. I gotta say, this is probably the most fun video I've made in a while, but Jesus Christ, I am so tired. It's almost as fun as that last video I did in costume. But that's a story for another time, wink wink. Follow me on my socials and also look on my community tabs to stay up to date on the behind the scenes of other videos. And speaking of behind the scenes, why not check out Behind the Sketches, where I get to go over the behind the scenes process of making these videos and my art. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day. This has been 2DS Studios, and until next time, stay tuned and stay cool.